All right, it is 6 p.m. We are going to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the Wisconsin Heights School Board Annual Meeting and Budget Hearing. We are going to welcome the electors, and there are 9 of us tonight, and so we'll just go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Barb Satz, Village of Black Earth.
I'm Mike Wagner, Town of Black Earth.
Matt Crow, Town of Black Earth.
Angie Will, Town of Mazo.
Cindy Biting, Town of Mazo.
Mary Beth Shaw on the Village of Mazo.
Dale Green, Village
Kendra?
Mazo.
Hi, Kendra Zuber-Buehler, Village of Mazo.
Oh, Dylan.
Oh, Dylan, we don't have a Zoom for this.
Okay.
Well, and just introduce the rest of them.
Well, and isn't
Craig
Yeah.
Gerlach, Interim Superintendent of Schools, Nakusa. I can't vote, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. And Jerome, you get to just say your name and
Jerome Almenstein, Town of Vermont.
perfect. Derek,
Derek Slider, Sauk Prairie, so non-voting.
there you go.
Kelly Santel, Madison, also not voting.
Awesome. Thank you to everybody. Did you say?
Madam.
That's Wayland Cross Plains.
I mean, you are in the room.
You are in the room, you are special.
And absent tonight is Greg Gorder. He is at a funeral, celebration of life. He's our interim business manager. and Liz Dostal is presenting at a conference. She is our middle high school principal.
And Dylan Helmenstein is at home with COVID, unfortunately, so we're missing him tonight, yes. But welcome, everyone. Thank you for your attendance. If you want to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do I have a motion to elect Craig Gerlach as the chairperson for the meeting?
I will second, was that you was the first?
Did I ask for a motion?
You asked for a motion, but I don't know if it was you were the first
I
or.
think we have to do
Oh, I
a
just-
nomination, isn't it?
several times?
Yeah, you have to do 3 times.
Three
to do a
times?
nomination.
Yep,
Okay, do I have a nomination for chairperson of the meeting?
I nominate Craig Gerlach.
Second.
Never mind.
We'll do the next one.
Okay.
You have to ask me.
Do I have another nomination for chairperson of our meeting tonight?
I nominate Craig Gorilla.
Oh, you don't have to.
You don't have to do that.
Thank you, Mary Beth. You already have him, but I will ask one more time. If anybody has an additional nomination for a chairperson? And I hear none. So, Yep,
Board
correct.
vote now.
All right, any other discussion on that? No. Cindy?
Yes.
Mary Beth?
Yeah.
Mike?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
I vote yes as well.
Well, thank you.
Take the floor.
People wonder why we do that 3 times. This is my 25th budget hearing, not necessarily annual meeting, because some districts aren't required to have an annual meeting. Most budget hearings and annual meetings have 1, 2, or 5 people attending. There are some that have hundreds, and I've been involved with some that have had hundreds. So when somebody's nominated, somebody might either not hear, but it's not uncommon to have 3 different people nominated, and then you have to, and those are the times when there are issues going on in the school district, so that is never pleasant. But that said, we will move on, and we
You
will.
got 2 nominations.
Yeah.
Right.
Really good.
You should feel extra special.
I can feel the power.
You want to do this again next year?
Roll over.
Oh, designated clerk for the meeting, and we do have our clerk here, and Angie Wolf
Thanks, Angie.
will be our clerk throughout the general meeting. Approval of the minutes of the last annual meeting, which was October 24th, in your packet, and I trust everyone read those minutes. Is there a motion to approve the 2022 annual meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, motion carries. State of the Schools report. Got a couple things I'll talk briefly about. The first, which ties directly into our budget that Derek will be going over, is our enrollment. We're up a couple students. That might not mean a whole lot, but it certainly beats the heck out of being down a couple of students. So at the end of the day, our enrollment, I would say, continues to be stable, and that's very, very significant. The status of our elementary school, we are about done. There are a couple questions that we still have on a couple items as it relates to some flooring and a wall that was put up this summer, that stand-up wall that I'm working with Mike Betcher on resolving those issues. But assuming we'll get that resolved, we'll have, I believe, at our next meeting, conversation in terms of we're complete. The solar project, finally we got to this. I was new, Derek was new, Greg was new. There was just a lot going on here. If I knew now what I knew now, we would have had this off the ground a long time ago. But it really, literally took up to last week for me to get figures from 3 entities on paper. Burke's been doing a wonderful job, and I finally got numbers from Vanguard, Alliant, which were one and the same, and then we're still working out some details on that. And then Nichols, we didn't have a number from Nichols, the electrician, not in writing. So we finally got those, went back in the minutes. The last motion was to support the solar project not to exceed $1.1 million, and it will not exceed $1.1 million. Staffing, we are almost fully staffed. It's been a struggle. EAs we're holding tight on. That was, we were really concerned going into the school year. But it's still our food service. We have an opening, those that are listening, we need a head cook in our elementary school. We've got some ideas. We've got people that are interested, and this is not a topic of conversation tonight, but it will be in the near future. We got to pay some people, some specific positions we really need to take a look at. First and foremost, our food service, they don't get paid very much. It's typical that in school districts, they're at the bottom of the pay scales. Well, feeding our kids is pretty important, and we can't find people to do this because of the pay. And we literally are running our staff ragged right now. And of course, when you do that, you run the risk of losing people. They're doing a fine job, we need some help. So those that are you listening out there, we're very much interested in talking to you. We may be looking at combining some positions, food service and EA, to come up with a full-time job that might be a little bit more appealing and whatnot. The rest of our staffing is holding tight. The school perception survey for staff for the community is out there. Parents, if you're listening and you haven't done the survey, you'll get a reminder email, I believe, too, to take that survey. I believe there's about a week left, and encourage everyone to take it. It's going to take 10 minutes, and that's going to be valuable in terms of just getting a baseline status of our school district. It's people's perceptions. It also includes information that will be valuable as we look forward to the hiring process of a superintendent, which is next on my list. I quickly got into the portal today. There was a couple additional soups, so I think we were looking at 6 or 7 right now. And if you'll recall, our Mike Ritchie, our consultant, saying people tend to wait till the last couple days before they want to get their name out there. We recently received our AC scores within, I believe, last week. Our composite score is 22.4, which is good. We continue to do very well academically. I will leave that for a later agenda item when Liz is here and can give you the details of that complete report. All of this then will tie into what is our next, what I would say, significant step. Of course, after you hire Sue, is our operational referendum. Derek and Greg completed the budget. After they're done, or Derek's done tonight, it's the end of a budget cycle. It's crazy. You know, the school starts, our calendar for budgeting starts July 1st. You know, we're paying people, but we don't actually wrap it up until tonight. And then starting about next month, we start planning for next year already. And of course, there'll be much more on the operational referendum. Any questions for me?
Thanks, Greg.
Seeing none, we will move on. And I'm going to turn this over to Derek, and he is going to do the budget summary, the 2023-24 budget summary.
So we have a presentation on our 23-24 budget. I don't know, it's going to be back here. I don't know where people want to sit for it.
And step over here so I can see.
And I tried to mirror this as much as I could off last year's presentation, so there wasn't anything new out of the ordinary coming at you in your annual meeting, which we never want to do. We have a hard enough time with the big numbers, so let's just keep it as streamlined as we can. So what we're going to go over now is the three largest funds, which are kind of our main operational funds. I shouldn't say largest, but I'll say our most kind of in tune to operations, which are your general fund, which is all your teaching staff, your maintenance, your kind of support services. Fund 27, which is a special education fund, which is all your costs related to IEPs and servicing students' IEPs and service plans. And then the other one is Fund 50, which is our food service fund, which is, as Craig said, feeding all those students that are in our building and the adults and everything else. So then we're going to go through what makes up our Fund 10 budget, our general operations budget, because that's the biggest. We want to dig in the deepest there. What makes up our funding overall, kind of where are our sources of revenue coming from. The main highlight of the evening, the tax levy, what's that going to be, and how much can you yell at me for everything of that. And then also kind of what's the change in the district's equalized value to kind of identify of that property tax levy, where's it going to go, who's paying for it, and what kind of municipalities the split is. Okay. So this is the kind of overall budget summary. I kind of tried to break it down into some high-level categories. As you can see, salary and benefits makes up just over $9.7 million of a $15.6 million budget. So if the only way to kind of reduce that is to cut people, which we don't want to do. So, and year over year, inflation drives that cost up, and it is ever increasing. Then there's just some other kind of high-level areas, transportation being a big one. Just under $1 million related to transporting kids to and from school and to and from school-related events throughout the year. So when somebody says, what are our problems with our buses? We're paying a lot of money for buses and trying to keep it as reasonable as possible to transport the students to and from school. The other big one is kind of the buildings and grounds, which is also janitorial staff, supplies, paper towels in the bathroom, cleaning supplies to keep the building looking as good as it does that the staff are doing, and it's also the salary and benefits related to that. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on with building projects and keeping the building running, and the utilities on, the heat going, as much as we may complain about the fluctuating heat here and there, but that's all involved in that cost. Okay. And at any point, stop me with questions. I tend to go pretty quickly, but I want to make sure this is understandable. This is taking our Fund 10 budget and just breaking it down into kind of where that's spent. 110,000 is, you could kind of divvy that out to elementary teachers. Teaching staff, salary, benefits, and supplies for elementary teachers. 120 through 160 are really middle school, high school. Kind of the cost related to the middle school, high school buildings. That's the teaching and salary benefits of the teaching related at those buildings. Everything in the 200,000 functions are kind of supporting student education. So that involves principals at the buildings, guidance counselors, support services, kind of teaching aides at some point could be in there. The business office staff, the district office staff to kind of keep everything running so the buildings can operate smoothly. And you'll see, this is just a personal anecdote because I don't want you to say, oh, Derek, there's a $2.5 million in business administration. Are we really paying you and Greg that much money? The answer is no. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that 250,000 function. It's business office for one. It's the business, the AP, so kind of our AP payroll, support person is in there. All our maintenance department, all our transportation costs are also in that line item. So remember when I said there was almost $1 million in transportation? That's in that line item. So there's a lot of stuff that is going into that. And then the other kind of item of note is the 410,000s. That $1.5 million item is our transfer to our special ed fund, because in special ed, the state funds roughly 30% of costs. So this is the additional roughly 67 to 70% that has to come from the general fund to support the special ed kind of fund in total. So of the total special ed, 30% is funded by the state, another 5% roughly is funded from federal grants, and the rest comes from a transfer from the general fund to the special ed fund of the district. So when people say it's just special ed dollars, it's not. It's really 60 to 65% of a dollar from the general fund that's funding that special ed. And we're just kind of continuing on with Fund 10. This is just kind of outlining, okay, where's our fund balance, which is receivable, taxes receivable, cash, investments. There's a lot of stuff that goes into fund balance. We don't have $6 million in cash sitting in the bank, ready to deploy. And this is a point in time number that fluctuates throughout the year because our revenue sources come in at different points throughout the year. So this is the June 30th fund balance. As of July 2nd, that number was different. But then just kind of going down where our revenues come from, the majority comes from our taxpayers because we're roughly 85% funded from taxes versus the state aid, just to kind of give an idea. You can just kind of work down, and then just kind of another very succinct, high level, here's where our Fund 10 expenditures are. We're projecting a balanced budget, which is always good to hear. I don't like presenting a deficit at all, so we got, Greg and I had a homework assignment from the July meeting to get that to a balanced budget. We did, so him and I felt good about that. Okay. Now we're just going into Fund 27. I talked about that transfer coming over, roughly 1.5 million, where our revenues come from, as you can see. We'd love for that state sources number to be $1 million or 1.2 million to get to 30, 40, 50% funding from the state. We're not there yet. We hope to get there at some point. But then, as you can see, our costs are rising as our student needs and IEP caseloads rise. And also, we have to pay those people that are providing those services, because it's tough to find educational assistants to do the work. So that's where that instruction and support services, those costs year over year are rising, but that's expected as the needs rise and cost of living rises as well. We aren't alone. That's happening all over. So don't look at me or Kelly and say, get that in line, what are you doing? We're doing it as best we can, and we're trying to maintain it. So. And then here's Fund 50, which is our food service fund. Previous years, we were kind of operating in a surplus. That's because the federal reimbursement rate for meals due to COVID was higher, and now it's expired. That's why we're projecting a deficit this year. We're using up some of that leftover surplus to kind of not have to make a transfer from the general fund. But that's something Greg and I are planning for in future years, is when that happens, that cost is going to be another added cost in the general fund. And just as an anecdote, the food supplies year over year are roughly 15% higher in the costs, because the supplier costs are just going up that much. So supply chain, scarcity of food for schools, that's just happening. We're not the only one. All districts are seeing it and feeling a pinch there. So. And then this is the, okay, at the end of the day, here's where our total expenditures were, all funds year over year. You're gonna probably look and say, that looks really weird, Derek. Why? The answer is because in 21-22, we just had this minor project of an elementary school being built going on. Those actually are costs to the district. We have to run those through a capital projects fund, and those are included there. That project was still ongoing into the 22-23 fiscal year. And now we're getting back to a more normalized figure. This came straight off a DPI worksheet, so I wanted to take it from there, but then also have the context of why that's looking so weird year over year. If we went back out to 2020-21, we'd have a figure probably in the $16.8 billion range, and then over the time it would have, our operational cost would have just kind of gradually increased, not dropped like a stone. So I kind of mentioned this earlier, and this is just a little foreshadowing here, but here's going to be the number I asked for our total levy, not to give it away early, a few slides too early, but that's the number, the just under 10.8 million that we received, about 2 million, just under $2.1 million from the state. So of our kind of combined, that's how much is coming from levy versus tax. And that's broken down in a percentage, roughly 85% from the levy. So as the district, when we're asking for additional funds, the taxpayers are kind of supplying a majority of that, just as a note. So here's where the real action happens. Here's how this is coming directly from the revenue limit worksheet, which is kind of the state imposed a kind of allowable amount of revenue the district can ask its taxpayers for. And of that, it's broken down into kind of two chunks, state aid versus levy. Based on our pupil count, the state said, we'll let you have roughly $10.7 million of controlled revenue to kind of ask your taxpayers for, which is kind of this number right up here, which is roughly $600,000 more than it was last year. And the reason for that is because the revenue limit per member went from $10,000 to $11,000 as part of the state budget, and that's where that difference is coming from. So because of what the state budget did, it allowed our revenue limit authority to expand, and kind of the amount we can raise expand. Along with that came our aid figure that came from the state. Year over year, that jumped by about $430,000, which is great, because if the state wants to pick up more of that $600,000 increase, we're not gonna complain. So that 10.7 minus the 2.1 gets us to, okay, here's, in Fund 10, our general operations, here's the levy the district can raise, which is just under 8.6 million. Then we have total revenue from other levies, which is our kind of levy to make the debt service payment on the elementary school referendum, which we're projecting at $2.2 million this year. Of that, $700,000 would be a defeasance. Last year, we had roughly $600,000 of defeasance, so we're kind of right in line with what we were doing last year. So the all-fund tax levy, year over year, is going up roughly $299,000. The levy dollar amount is $10,791,053. $10,791,053. That's a big number. Just pause there as that kind of settles in. If we look at the mill rate year over year, it actually went from 10.75 and it's going to drop to 10.21. So if everything else stayed the same, if your property value stayed exactly the same, year over year, your taxes would go down. We all know property values didn't stay exactly the same, so I'm not going to guarantee anything. So, yep. So here's kind of just a bar graph showing over the last 7 years, what has the dollar value of the levy done? So it's kind of gradually went up, and it's kind of tapering off the last 3 to 4 years. Here's another kind of slide just showing what the mill rate for the district has done. Last 4 years kind of dropping, but just kind of hovering roughly in that $10 to $11 range. This is just another graph and slide showing levy and mill rate. Just a little more narrowed down range. Okay. And I promise this is my last slide. This is just showing the breakdown by municipality, what the equalized property values are. So of that $10.791 million, or $10.79 million levy, how is that going to break out? So what this is saying is, if you took this 173,588 divided by that percentage multiplied by our total levy dollars, that's the amount that gets assessed to the Village of Black Earth. And you kind of do that with each municipality. What I always like to do as well is show, okay, from last year to this year, how did our valuation change? Because sometimes you can say, if we had 15% of the total last year, we might only have 13% this year. So it kind of might shift as to how the overall levy dollars are dispersed. So I did a change year over year by municipality. So as you can see, the town of Mazo may be getting less of the kind of overall levy dollar increase versus town of Cross Plains. This just kind of shows by municipality how the breakdown changed year over year, and how those levy dollars are going to be dispersed. And then you're probably all asking, okay, what does that mean for my taxes? So after they get dispersed by municipality, within your municipality, it's whatever the assessed value is of your house versus the total assessed value of the municipality. That's kind of what your tax is going to be. So I can't say personally what Barb's house did in her village or township, or what Angie's did in hers. That's kind of an individual by individual basis, but if your property went up 300%, you can probably guess that your taxes are gonna go up a little bit, at least, if not more. Are there any questions, comments, concerns?
Just, the levy here,
Yep.
how are, like, we have Vermont, and then we have Black Earth.
Yep.
How is the value of that changed, or, how should I say this? I guess the question I had is, because our taxes in Vermont 2 years ago went up quite a bit.
Okay.
Black Earth did not,
Okay.
and now Black Earth is going up a little bit. I guess I'm not, and maybe I could ask you after the meeting, to not to hold up everyone.
That's what the meeting's for.
How is that all, how is the value picked in these different townships?
So the equalized value is set by the Wisconsin Department of Revenue.
Okay.
Every January 1st, they go and they do an assessment statewide.
Okay,
And they basically kind of do an assessed value, and then they equalize it. So the equalized value means it's 100% of assessed value. So if everybody was at 100% of kind of assessed value, or kind of fair market value, is what you would say. And that way they can kind of disperse it evenly throughout the state. Because in a municipality, if you look at your tax bill, you'll have an assessed value, and you'll have a percent of kind of equalized or fair market value. Some municipalities are sitting at 95%, some are at 80%, and at a certain point, they have to get reassessed. So it just depends on when that reassessment occurs for kind of each individual villages, or even sections within a village get reassessed at different times as well. Some do it, the entire village at the same time, some do sections.
oh, okay.
And if you buy a house, it gets reassessed to 100 or fair market value when it's bought. So if somebody buys a house, your taxes inherently are probably gonna go up, because my guess is the price you paid was more than the assessed value in a lot of cases,
Okay.
if that helps. So in that situation, it may have been that there was either a lot of growth in that township or new construction, so it kind of went up, or a portion of that township got reassessed to kind of more of a fair market value, whereas other people or other townships didn't.
So one explanation I got 2-3 years ago in this, we had all that rain coming through. Township of Vermont is built up, a lot of homes are built out of the flood zone.
Okay.
Could that affect also the levy of the value of, let's say the lower land and everything? Being able to build on that land more in the Vermont township because it's out of the flood zone.
So the explanation was the town of Vermont is out of the floodplain, so the values were inherently higher, the fair market value was inherently higher.
Because you could, I could build, I could
Yeah.
sell the land at a higher price if I wanted someone to build on our farm compared to Black Earth because it's more in the flood zone. Is that,
I don't want to say yes or no.
Okay.
Because I'm not,
maybe just talking out of his hat too.
and I don't know, because
Okay,
there also may have been, I know that flood went through a while ago, that it may have knocked those
values.
values way down, or there was structures and kind of taxable value on them that is no longer there.
Okay,
And then when that happens, it's not like the levy dissipates or kind of goes away. That just gets spread out over a smaller number of properties.
okay, all right.
If I may say, we are now in the public hearing and review of this meeting. That's a very good question, and it comes up each year.
Well, people ask me, did your taxes go up? I said, well, yeah, it did quite a bit. because of this new school, and we're very supportive of it.
Yep.
But then we also have some land in Black Earth that their value never went up at all, which is okay, because I didn't have to pay more tax on that. But, you know, you would think that townships that close should have been more closely valued.
Each township or municipality are responsible for their own assessments.
Oh, okay.
And they can create an ordinance, if that's the right term, to assess at 90% or 85%. You know, back there's some at 70%. All of that comes into play, and as Derek said, there likely becomes a time where you have to reassess.
Okay.
My municipality is the town of Rome in central Wisconsin. We just got reassessed, and mine went up 98%. And so I contacted the open books auditor, and I knew, I think, what was going to come out of that, but I just wanted to be reassured. If everyone's assessment goes up at the same rate, and you levy for the same amount of money, nothing changes. But they don't go up at the same rate. Some are going up 15%, some are going up 2.7%. When we talk about a levy from a school district, we are giving you the average of these.
Right, we're talking a levy on this total value, and so of that 10.75 divided by that will get us our mill rate. We're taking the equalized value of the entire district of all municipalities kind of pooled together, because that's the kind of tax base the school has. And we're doing it at equalized value, which is 100% or fair market value of every property in the district.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Now I can explain that to
Yeah, it's
people.
it's complex.
I was gonna say, that's the first question we get anytime we open the door of referendum talk to.
Oh.
That's a very frustrating thing, people not being able to conceptualize, well, we're all one, but we don't all pay the same at the same rate because of the different municipalities. So that is,
Okay.
we get that every year, and it's still, even after explained, it's frustrating, right? It doesn't make sense, because you're a mile this way and it's a difference of 8% one way or the other,
Right.
but yeah, it's different times, assessments are, you know, it's very complicated, but,
Now, rest assured, I'm not expecting a 98% increase in my tax. We're in a recreational area, and there was a substantial golf course that was built a few years ago. So it's artificially inflating everybody.
Oh.
So, except, in very similar to this, we just got reassessed. The city of Nakusa didn't. So until they catch up, you know, we clearly, if you just were reassessed, you clearly will likely see an increase. But in terms of what the school tax credit offers, I was told our taxes may not even go up at all. So until you get this, and this last 2 years, because of the economy and the inflation, I don't know, you're not gonna know until your tax bill comes out, because homes right now, in my mind, are artificially inflated. But that really comes into play too.
and also, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think somebody said too, it's the residential and commercial growth too can make an impact. So if you have some of these smaller municipalities that don't really have growth ever, and then you have the villages building, you know, 10 new houses a year, and you can spread the wealth a little bit more, then you're also gonna see the valuations change
I see.
according to I think, right?
Yep.
That's, yeah, so it's a never-ending ebb and flow
And
of.
correct me if I'm wrong here, Derek. I believe inflation last year was 8%.
Yes.
Our budget, the amount of money that we're gonna actually levy is at 3%.
Oh, wow.
So considerably lower than inflation. And if you take a look at, you know, health insurance, that's 15%. You know, we still remain a very frugal school district.
So that was a good point by Craig. The total dollars of the levy are going up roughly 2.85%, so just under 3% year over year. When inflation is at 8%, that means we're trying to do everything we can within our means, within the budget, to kind of be cognizant of the taxpayers who are
Right.
footing 85% of that bill. Keeping that kind of impact on them as minimal as we can, if that helps.
Yeah, thank you, yeah.
Are there any other questions or comments for Derek? Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Yes, I think we just said, yeah, yes. Oh, thank And actually, I don't think we said it in the Right, because it is right now, so we don't have to change anything.
Okay, moving on. Thanks, Derek. And Greg, I don't know if Greg's on or not, I don't think he is. New business. Resolution number 1, authorization for adoption of a tax levy for the 2023-2024 fiscal year of $10,791,053. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Resolution number 2, and it's in your booklet, authorization for provision of school board salaries and reimbursements. Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Resolution number 3, authorization for provision of hot lunch and breakfast programs. Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a first and second. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Resolution number 4, authorization for provision of legal proceedings on behalf of the district. Motion to approve.
Second.
First and second. All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the 2024 annual meeting. We need to establish the date. It's recommended that we do it at 5:30 p.m. on October 28th, 2024. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any other business which may be legally addressed at this meeting? Seeing none, hearing none, we will move on to adjourn the meeting. Motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
We have a first and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.